330 yards. Initially, Hitler banned development of the weapon, believing that rifles and submachine guns were all his troops needed. But in 1944, he was presented with one on a tour of the Eastern Front and was blown away. He christened it the Sturmgewehr, or assault rifle. Only a few thousand made it into the troops' hands. It had performed well, but it had come too late to influence the battlefield. Just a few years later, a Russian tank commander, Mikhail Kalashnikov, gave birth to the greatest assault rifle of them all, the legendary AK.
Kalashnikov's great genius was to recognize that he needed to create a weapon which was going to be suitable for a massive conscript army. That's the secret. If a Russian conscript can handle it, so too can an Afghan guerrilla.
Working alongside Hugo Schmeisser, the father of the Sturmgewehr, Kalashnikov unveiled the new assault rifle in 1947. The Automatic Kalashnikov, or AK-47, was born.
From the Sturmgewehr of the Second World War, we see the Russians developing an assault rifle issued not simply to a few soldiers, but to absolutely everybody, and becoming, in the AK-47 and its many derivatives, perhaps the most democratic combat arm in world history.
Like the Sturmgewehr, the AK-47 fired 600 rounds per minute and was effective to 330 yards. Identical weapons? No. Built with incredible tolerances, the AK can take sand, mud, and water, but never jams.
Even today, around the world, we are picking up Kalashnikovs made out of unmatched parts, in which you may have a Chinese receiver and a Yugoslav barrel and all of this stuff all cobbled together in a Frankenstein weapon, which can still fire pretty much just as well as the designer, Mr. Kalashnikov, intended.
Soldier armed with an AK-47 knows when he lifts it to his shoulder to fire, he's got about a 99% chance of it going off the first time, every time. Let's give it a try. Somewhere between 50 and 70 million AK-47s or various versions have been made by as many as 15 countries around the world since the late 1940s. You can buy one of these for $15 in the Arms Bazaar in Mogadishu. I assume that these are going to be around for at least another generation.
In America, the response to the AK-47 was slow in coming. The first attempts were flawed as they tried to get the balance right between the precision and punch of a rifle and the brutal spray of a machine gun. It wasn't until 1957 that the American military got their hands on an assault rifle. But when they did, it was worth the wait.
The M14 is the first modern assault rifle that the U.S. Army and Marine Corps use, and it is a remarkably accurate weapon. And M14s are still used today as hunting rifles.
A fully automatic rifle with a massive punch and awesome accuracy. The M14 had it all.
Accuracy is still a very high priority. Let me show you. You can put 50 rounds down range, and if you haven't hit anybody with it, you haven't done anything, except wasted 50 rounds.
But after just 5 years in service, incredibly, it was withdrawn. It was too heavy and too expensive to produce on the scale needed.
The problem with it was that it was really too good for the requirements of the U.S. Army. Nobody needed a rifle that accurate.
Experiments from the First World War by the Germans determined that most soldiers engaged targets at 300 yards or 300 meters or less on the battlefield. Well, the rifles were effective out to 1,000 meters and could kill at well over 3,000 yards. It was too much.
American designers led by Eugene Stoner set out to produce a rifle that was lighter, had a greater volume of fire, but still had enough accuracy at short distances. The result was the M16. Made from steel, aluminum, and composite plastics, it fired a smaller bullet, the 5.56 millimeter, and weighed just over 6 pounds. At little more than half the weight of the Kalashnikov, it was a lightweight, space-age stuff. But soldiers on the ground weren't convinced.
When the M16 was first adopted by the United States military in 1965, the old traditionalists hated it. It looked like a toy and felt like a toy, and they didn't feel that the bullet would actually be effective in combat because it was fairly short range and it didn't seem to do much.
When I was in service and using M16s, it didn't seem to have the stopping power that a military firearm should have.
We called the Mattel 16 because it was made of plastic. To me at that time it was a piece of garbage.
The M16 is one of those guns that is either loved or hated.
And plenty of soldiers in Vietnam did hate it. They'd been told that they didn't need cleaning kits for their M16s, that they were so advanced they'd never jam. But in the field, the M16 was totally unreliable.
We hated it because if it got any grime or corruption or dirt in it, which you always get in any rifle out in the field, it'll malfunction.
The shells ruptured in the chambers, and the only way to get the shell out was to put a cleaning rod. So you can imagine in a firefight trying to clean your weapon after 2-3 rounds. It was a nightmare for Marines at the time.
9 of us had M16 seized up in a firefight. We almost got killed.
The jamming problems were eventually solved by incorporating a chrome-lined bore-in chamber to eliminate corrosion and stuck cartridges. Cleaning kits were also issued and a forward assist button added. Big Mama, redesignated the M16A1, the rifle was reborn.
The M16A1 was a very efficient and a very effective firearm.
Now the M16 is a much different weapon because they've had time to perfect it.
It very quickly became the Sweet 16.
The AK-47 and M16 have dominated rapid fire for half a century. But to survive, you have to adapt. And that's what assault rifles like the MP7 are doing. A future combat weapon, the MP7 is lighter and shorter than the AK and M16. It also packs a bigger punch, firing a 4.6 by 30 millimeter armor-piercing round. Combining portability, accuracy, and firepower, the MP7 is the future of rapid fire, the end product of everything that's been learned down the years. Drawn together, the branches on its family tree reflect its unique genesis. Richard Gatling fathered the first machine gun. The marriage of Maxim guns and barbed wire changed the battlefield. Submachine guns put firepower into the hands of soldiers, and assault rifles led to a new generation of deadly rapid-fire weapons. The end result? The MP7. Weaponologically, it's the top of the tree.